Hi everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me. If you can hear me, give me a reaction, a thumbs up. I think we've got. Okay, great. Thanks, Sarah. Um, welcome everybody to the next webinar in the Legal Ops Careering Ahead series. This is the fourth in the series, devoted to skills. And the focus on this one is what skills do you need to work in legal ops and where do you get them? The previous ones focused on consultancy and mentoring, and what does the role of legal ops manager look like. This one's a little bit more in detail when it comes to the skills, and should be practical and useful for the people that are here, and I suppose the people that are watching this later on. I'm pleased to have a very international panel today. I've got Piia, Tomasz, and Kasper, who will introduce themselves in a sec. But the main focus of today is to look at skills broadly, and then hopefully taper down into some more specifics. But if we start us off with hopefully an easy question. What do you guys currently do, and what do you enjoy about it? So maybe I'd start with Piia.
So I'm Piia Madissoo. I'm based in Finland, working for EY. And my title is Legal Transform and Operate Lead. That can have very many meanings, but currently means that I'm developing our offerings in what we call Legal Transform and Operate in Finland. So it's managed legal services, outsourced legal compliance processes, consultancy for legal departments, that type of very versatile. And what I like about it the most is that I actually get to share the knowledge that I've accumulated and not use it only for the benefit of one organization, but I actually get to help multiple organizations do this thing that we call legal ops better.
That's nice. And Tomasz?
Yes, Tomasz Krzyzewski. I'm head of legal operations at Coca-Cola HBC, which is a bottler of the Coca-Cola company. I'm in a role for since 23. And before I was legal director for Poland and Baltic countries. And what I like about it is, I like to say that I'm having a role of someone who I really needed back when I was legal director. So I love to be approached when lawyers are struggling with something. And although I'm not that idealistic, it really feels good to make their life easier and to really help them. And I got strangely, I was not expecting, but I got a sense of like mission or you call it, but it really feels really good. And the type of work, I like more project-based work rather than operational day-to-day. So yeah, it's really great support. Thanks.
Thanks, Tomasz. And Kasper?
Yeah, Kasper Hansen. I'm working with Arla Foods. I'm a senior legal counsel on the one side and head of our legal operations on the other part. So I have a dual role. But the focus of today is, of course, my job as head of legal operations, where I really like this area because it combines the legal work, the processes around legal work, and also the focus on doing things smarter, more efficient, utilizing technology, stuff like that. So that's really a sweet spot for a person like me.
I think there's probably a running trend with all of you, and probably with legal ops people in general, which is, I think, about helping people. I guess helping people, continuous improvement, and getting, I guess, in a way, making people happier in their day-to-day work. I suppose if we look at skills broadly, I suppose what we'll do is we'll taper down a little bit. We'll start broad and taper down. So what skills do you think are needed in legal ops work? And maybe I'll start with Tomasz this time.
Yes, what skills are needed? I think you need to, you don't have to be a lawyer first, but you need to understand what they are doing, right? So if how to phrase it, I think it has to do with design thinking, like emphasize with your stakeholders or with end users of what you're going to do. So you don't have to have a legal background, but you need to understand what lawyers are doing, what they are struggling, what mindset they have. And I will give you example. I mean, at least in our organization, it would be very difficult to help lawyers successfully if you don't acknowledge the sense of duty they have, which is not really that intuitive, right? And even myself, I was struggling at certain point to understand, to really address things in a way that would make them feel comfortable and address the sense of duty they have when I wanted to work on a more role sort, right? So I had to address it in a way that will fulfill their sense of duty without simply moving things from their agenda to someone else, right? This was not doing it. So empathy, really knowing what lawyers are doing, and then there are some skills around. I think change management is extremely important, and Piia mentioned transformation. I think it's really it won't be enough that you are great in execution. I mean, simply you will not be great in execution if you will not manage the change properly. So I mean, this last couple of years, I think if I need to name one thing, would be change management, honestly, because this whole role is about changing things. It's not about maintaining things as they are. I mean, it's very rarely where, companies or legal departments wants to stay where they are and they're saying, okay, we need legal ops, right? I mean, they want legal ops to, to improve things always, but then to, things are not going well. Let's introduce a role that will make things going better, or we are on the right track, but we need to accelerate, or we need to, have some dedicated resources for that. So it's really about changing things. So yeah, if I need to name one thing, it will be change management.
Okay, great. Just quickly as a curveball, maybe, for the sense of duty for lawyers, does that also affect things like innovation from a perfection perspective as well? So
Yeah.
naturally lawyers want to have everything perfect.
Yeah, I mean,
but the innovation doesn't quite work like that, I guess, right?
yes, well, I should clarify. I'm a lawyer myself, and I frequently think about, how proud we are of being perfectionists. And probably if I talk to my network, like a legal law firm people network, probably the one thing that they would be very proud of, that they are perfectionists. And even when they say like, oh, this is really a big struggle of mine, they will feel kind of like, okay, is this like kind of job interview? What are your issues, right? You say, oh, I'm a perfectionist. Then, which I genuinely think it's something that you really need to work on, right? Because it's really difficult to proceed being perfectionist, because even if you will do things fine, you will not have a sense of this feeling that you are on the right track. So it's a lot about mindset. But this is another topic. I think as a legal operation, you need to acknowledge this one thing that lawyers have, like sense of duty and being perfectionists, right? It will be very difficult to go to lawyer without any preparation and say like, listen, it's good enough, let's proceed further, we need to accelerate. Like, I think naturally, at least lawyers I know, they wouldn't feel comfortable with that. So it requires some work, some preparation work. But to do this work, you need to acknowledge, you need to know how they are thinking. So you need to know that they got this sense of duty. Sometimes lawyers like to think that, okay, it has to stay with us because no one will do it as well as we will. Also related to being perfectionists. Yeah, that's a good point, Marc. Yes.
I think this all feeds into your main point about change management and managing the change.
Yeah.
I guess if I move to Kasper, what skills do you think you need to work in legal ops?
I completely agree that change management is probably also my number one skill or focus area that I think is really, really crucial to excel in this. And I guess along the same line as Tomasz just mentioned, being able to convert business and legal processes or conversations, bring that together in one is really the core of our challenge to make sure that lawyers, of course, safeguard the risk. We are trained to do that, but we also need to acknowledge the speed of pace or the need for speed, essentially in the business, and so it's about striking the balance here. And I think a lot of lawyers are good at that, but that's essentially what we're doing here to make things as smooth as possible. It comes without saying, of course, that project management in general is a massive thing, because a lot of what we do is project management, and I think coming back to empathy, as Tomasz mentioned as well, legal design thinking is also a thing that at least I've discovered after I've moved into legal ops, and I think it is a skill that's not only for legal ops actually, but for every lawyer, and it's so different from what you are trained in your early career, either at university or if you are an attorney at law. So these are probably my main skills to focus on.
Okay, makes sense. And Piia?
I might pull this to a more abstract level, and I'd put it into like two buckets. There are people skills and the logical skills. So people skills very much boils down to what we've been speaking about here, or what we heard about, which is change management. Because without the people skills, it is very difficult to get over the burden of I do not want to change, because that's sort of from like neuroscience perspective, it is a very natural reaction to be reluctant to change. But if we move to the other side, which is the logical thinking, one thing that I've benefited very much of is having also studied in business school and having studied information and service management, where I've learned the process thinking, what operations management is, how do you improve processes, what is Lean Six Sigma, economic modeling, and all these skills. And it just helps me communicate with the business people, because ultimately lawyers are only one team in a corporation. And when you move on to work with, for example, IT, that was one of my core stakeholders when I worked in a legal ops role in the house. It was so much easier to communicate with them when I had all this lingo and all these sort of frameworks that I could communicate in with the IT department.
Okay, that makes sense. So just on that, is it like marketing to different teams within an organization based on, I suppose, what their particular needs are, I guess. IT
Yeah.
will be different to legal, which will be different to, let's say, sales, right?
Well, IT was my specific example because often legal ops entails introducing new tech solutions. So usually legal ops people are also the IT business product owners. And then you have your counterparts in the IT department. They need to have on board in order to get your funding, for example, or your resources for executing your IT projects. So having them on board and them being convinced that you're going to deliver on a project that creates value is very essential for being to excel in your role if it entails that IT component.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. I guess if we drill down a bit, I guess there were quite a few skills in the kind of broad net that I put out there. But maybe if we start with change management, and I guess how would somebody acquire those skills in the workplace? Maybe I start with maybe Kasper.
Yeah, I mean, change management is to me difficult really to put into a box, because I think it's so many different things. For my own part, I can say that this is an area where I've not a lot of formal training, so I've not attended a lot of courses or anything. I would like to, however, but I actually haven't. It has mainly been studying, I would say, reading, and also do it yourself. So learning by practice, and this is particularly relevant, I think, because you really realize what is working and also what is not working. And I've been in both ends of that scale. So I've definitely learned a lot by just trying things out. And I think that is probably a general thing that is maybe also a characteristic of people who thrive in this area. They're curious and they are open to test things out. And if you don't have that openness, you should reconsider if this is because you really need to test things out here. And that also includes the communication. Of course, you want, as a lawyer, of course, to reduce the likelihood of this, but testing and trialing is a very, very crucial part, I think, in this area. But I mean, I think LinkedIn has been my primary source of learning, actually, since I came into this. I started, I would say, working on the field of legal ops about 6 years ago. But at that time, I did not know the legal ops as a function. So yeah, joining Clock was also a fundamental basic that really learned me a lot at the time. So a diverse income of information from different angles.
Okay. And I guess if I move to Piia maybe, what is your view on change management? Like, do you think it's something that has to be learnt on the job, or can it be learnt elsewhere, or can you get the training for it? I suppose what's the best way, I suppose.
I think the depth will only come with the job. You can learn it from the books because it's basically psychology and neuroscience combined. So those will teach you what the mechanisms for change resistance are and how to overcome them. But then having those interpersonal skills and dealing with people day to day is ultimately how you see them sort of in real life. And for me, like, this has been a very recent revelation. I always consider, like, especially after having been at the receiving end of a poorly managed IT project at my previous employer. During the pandemic, I got an email like, now you need to approve your contracts in this system for a specific sector. And I was like, okay, I've heard nothing about this. And that was the moment that I realized, okay, if I ever run a project, which I then later on did, I'm going to do it better, because it becomes so difficult to take on board anything new when you're just to get this blurb. But then now that I've been studying sort of small chunks of neuroscience to get in this pilot program that we have, that's more related to focusing, but it's also because it requires habit change. And ultimately, if we implement changes in how we work, that's also a habit change. That's a work habit change. Then that sort of made it click for me that I need to understand these fundamentals in order to be able to do my job well and actually help people to overcome this change. I'm the very tech forward guy, as is Kasper, by his description. So I'm very eager to try out new things and very happy to go into that change. But then I can't forget, or no legal operations professional leader can forget, that they are at the front end of the queue, and then they have the back of the pack that they need to also get on board so that the transformation is actually complete.
Have you got any tactics that have worked well for you in the past, even a small thing?
Yeah, I've tried to be very approachable and very sort of I have quite a quirky personality, so I leverage that. I'm not afraid to be sort of subject to laughter if I'm doing something quirky. So what we did in our project, we actually did videos where we did something funny in order for it not to be very stiff corporate communications. But for like internal communication purposes, we did those, and then it became a little funny thing. So that was maybe one. But obviously, just being open to listening and catching up with your key users, for example, very often, that's something very essential.
Okay, that makes sense. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No worries.
And Tomasz, what are your views on skills in change management?
I don't want this discussion to be like, one person says something and then we all agree with each other. So I can say I tend to agree with both of you what you said about, like primarily you learn on the job. But I want to kind of underline how important it is what Kasper said at the beginning. You need to do some homework. And it's not necessarily in the books. I mean, it's very difficult to learn it from the books, honestly. I mean, I think the older you get, the more time passes from your graduation, you understand how much, how little you learned at the university. And I think it's with change management too. I think it's very organizational and country driven. So I think you will, if I'm coming from state-owned, water company in Poland and I'm going to a startup, I will not communicate the same way. And if I'm coming from legal, I will, and I want to communicate to people from HR, I will not communicate the same way. So what I would suggest, observe a lot, and I'm a very move forward type of person. I'm not the great, I'm not the greatest in observing, but this actually helped me to push myself into this. I'm more into doing, right? And I wanted to do, but it's really important to observe and to find your communication champions, right? Like find people you admire, right? And I was doing it, and I was a legal director, like, find person from sales who is a great communicator. Not necessarily communicator especially, and not necessarily someone who is labeling himself as a change manager, right? If you have a team that is in charge of change management, like I'm blessed with the people who are in charge of change management, right? They are providing trainings and so on. That's great. But if you don't have them, I would suggest find someone who really impresses you in terms of the way they communicate, the way they are. And we all been there, right? Like you think there is a project that is super complex, and there is this guy or lady who is like communicating it in a way like it's just, natural. Talk to these people, and I think they are usually coming from the functions they are communicating to. See the differences. Like I think HR are always more, about emotions and about empathy and about, trying to put yourself in the shoes of people who is receiving communication and so on, right? While sales is so busy, I'm talking, retail FMCG market, but sales is usually so overwhelmed with so many different things that you need to be as direct as possible. Like at the end of the day, they are interested. What do you want me to do, right? What are you expecting from me? So talking a lot about the background and so on, it's less important than what is it for me, and what do you need me to do, right? It's a bit of like you are, talking to your manager, like how can I help you? And then it's a lot about geographies, right? Like you probably communicate different way to different to people from different countries, different regions, and so on. So what I suggest is before and I did it, I was trying to, do some change management without doing this homework. And every time I did it, I failed, right? Because I was too straightforward or I was too fluffy. So it always helps to do the homework, to identify your stakeholders, to think who you are communicating to, what is the layer you're communicating to, what are the nations you're communicating to, what are the functions you're communicating to, and then you adjust everything, frequency, style of communication, the form of communication. Like for some, email is actually the best way, right? And some others, they require to have a call. Sometimes you're not even communicating yourself. You need to actually talk to the example, right? If you have people on the market, field sales, you need to find the leader in their structure, and you need to get him on board. Otherwise, it will be just, I'm making it up, but like just the lawyer sending us email, right? While if it's my boss, sometimes you need to show yourself with the other person to make people see that the transformation you're running, it's not only you, it's actually their function head or their manager who is interested in it. So it requires a lot of homework. It requires a lot of consideration. And I think doing it on the job is extremely important. Getting experience is extremely important, but it will be less relevant if the experience is only bad one, right? I mean, if you make the same mistakes, it will be difficult for you. At a certain point, you will realize, okay, I need to do my homework, and the sooner you will do it, and you can do it before the first time you are trying to manage the change. So I think observing and talking to people, identifying people that really you admire in this regard is really, really helpful. And then connecting to other people who are actually doing it as a core of their job, like legal ops professionals or change management specialists. And then, sorry for a too long answer probably, but then there are some trainings actually, right? And some of them are really good, but don't go to the first one you pop up on the Google or now GPT, but talk to people. I mean, I'm in touch with Kasper and some other colleagues all the time, and before I go to any training, I'm asking, what do you think, right? Like, did you identify anything better in this regard? And with legal ops, it's just last sentence, Marc, sorry. With legal ops, it's so much easier than with purely legal function, right? Like people are very open, very willing to share. I'm not saying that lawyers are not, but with legal ops, my experience, and probably some of yours as well, is that this is really like to the extreme, because it's also the area that is so new, I think, that people are really seeking support and offering it. So it's really, the number of people that I met last 3 years is incredible. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. So it would be a pity not to take advantage of it. I mean, calls like this one, right? So yeah, that would be my recommendation. Thanks.
Cool.
Marc, can I spin this off with 3 points?
Sure. Okay, for it.
First, intercultural management is very much a scientific field as well. You can do also reading on that. I think it's Hofstede probably started that. I've also experienced this. If you, for example, go into Asian cultures, this was also already when I was studying in an international program. I might be working on a project and I might be getting nods, and then they would be doing a completely different thing. Whereas all of us are from like European cultures. Kasper both from Nordic cultures, and I think Polish is also fairly close from what I know from my friends. So being sort of quite direct and open and honest is quite normal here. So that might be a big contrast. The second thing, I worked at a formerly state-owned, fully state-owned, and still partially state-owned listed company before joining EY, and just not presuming that everything has to be stiff, even though it's a formerly state-owned company, but actually sort of feeling the air if there is room for breaking the sort of norm, breaking the status quo. I would also encourage that, because that can be very refreshing and you can actually stick in people's minds better. And the third point about change management, I 100% agree with what Tomasz said about salespeople. And this is where I would highlight that if you ever do a tech project, solution selection is a part of the change management process, because you can assume that a busy salesperson will probably look at a 2-minute video, if even that, as a part of their training. They need to be able to use the system just based on what the system is. It needs to be intuitive enough. And often general trainings also sort of fly by a person's needs, so they zone out quite quickly.
That totally makes sense. I think I've learnt that mistake before in implementing CLM. There's one, I think, in my list, I was going to go straight into another skill, but just before I do, I think you've all in different parts said about learning lessons, I guess making mistakes before and learning from them, lessons learned, things like that. Do you, I guess this is one for everybody, whoever wants to answer it can answer it. But do you think people should share their mistakes or lessons learned more than they do currently? I open it up to the floor. Whoever wants to take that one.
Kasper, do you want to take it since you were nodding as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a very, very important lesson, not just for yourself, but you actually also learn more about it when you share it with others and say it out loud. So I think it's not just benefiting your audience, but actually also yourself. And I think just coming back to what Tomasz also said, this is really what, at least also what I feel in the legal ops community, as an extreme eagerness to help each other out. And actually, I would even go as far as saying, if you are in a project with this specific project or issue or challenge, I think there's so many open hands to actually reach out and have a conversation around how should I approach my issue, and you will get tons of help. Because and maybe that's not answering your question, but I think the culture part that was just mentioned and the know your stakeholders is so important that you need to put it into that context in order to get the relevant feedback. So yeah, absolutely important.
I think that makes sense. I think that goes towards another part of learning skills, right? I think you're learning skills from others that have experienced it before, uh, compared with obviously a book or a course or etc. But Piia, did you have anything to add to that?
The only disclaimer I would also make is that it might depend on culture, since we already touched upon that. So I'm also very much the open, honest, vulnerable type of person. I make myself sort of open to critique in that way as well, and I'm very prepared for that. But it might be too much a show of weakness in some cultures if you share your mistakes very openly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
No, I think I fully agree. I think there is something, I like the balance, to be honest. I think what I'm observing sometimes is like going from left to right. So never admitting mistakes, and then like, being very proud of the mistakes that we are like trying so many things and all this failing. And it's, I agree to a certain extent that, you need to try different things, and then, all these stories that you need to fail like whatever 100 times to then come up with a unicorn startup. That's fine. But all these metaphors, I think we talk about, people who became billionaires and they failed so many times. And we are trying to apply this logic to the corporate environment, where facing the truth, I mean, if you will be, if you will fail 100 times, you may not get the next chance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it depends, right? Like I was trying so many things, so many ideas, so many ways of doing things that failed. They were not accommodated simply. That's fine in most of the time, because then I come up with the idea that was, hitting the spot, right? But I think if you are managing, so if it's about trying different things, that's fine. But if you are doing something wrong repetitively, there is nothing to be proud of. I think it's a learning that you need to actually finally acknowledge and find a way to do it better. Because honestly, how would you react if I'm managing the project for the 15th time? I'm communicating it terribly, and then for the 15th time I'm putting on LinkedIn a post like, "Oh guys, I want to share with you another change that I didn't manage at all." Right? People are furious, and this is the 15th product. Like, honestly, it sounds nice when we're talking billionaires and startups, but I think it's a lot about taking learning and actually not repeating the mistake. And I like this saying that, was this baseball player who was, it's not that he was not making mistakes, he was never making the mistake twice. And I think this is very relevant. So it really depends. I agree also on the cultural thing. I honestly, I don't like, when people are saying like, oh, I failed another time and it's amazing because, I got so many great learnings. Okay, let's see it for the future. Like if this gaps are addressed, right? And this is what I'm trying to do. I mean, I don't want to be also overselling my failures. And honestly, I'm quite upset. I see the benefits with in the future, like, okay, I'm taking learnings and so on, but at the time I'm really not happy, honestly. And the initial thinking is always like, oh, I had a great idea, right? And it's just people didn't catch up with my absolutely amazing thinking, right? Which obviously is not correct. In it was never correct in my case, to be honest. So yeah, I think it's about finding balance and really being honest. I think if you are honest with this, if you are upset with your failure, and then you are actually genuinely thinking about identifying what you could have done better, and you actually do it better for the future, that's fine. That's honest, right? But I'm not a fan of just saying like, like this awards for the greatest mistake. I don't know. I mean, anyway, it's maybe
Yeah.
oversharing from my side, but yeah.
No, makes sense. And Kasper, did you want to have a?
No, I was just, after listening to the wise words of both Tomasz and Piia, just wanted to nuance my own answer, because I realized that there are nuances to this. Because when I say yes, you should share your mistakes, I'm actually thinking in communities like the ones we are in right here with your network. If I was running a project, which I am, and I do mistakes, I wouldn't just broadcast it out and underline I did a mistake. Not that I don't admit it, because I really need to be honest, I guess, and also build trust with my stakeholders. And as already alluded to, I might lose the trust if I put too much emphasis on that. I'll just change the way I operate or the way I do things, so I at least show that I learn from my mistakes. So I think and absolutely agree on the cultural part. There's areas where this is not as possible to be as direct as we maybe are in the Scandinavian countries and in Europe. So again, back to the conclusion from before, it's all about who's your audience, who's your stakeholders, and what is sensible. But for sure, I'm a firm believer that we learn from our mistakes, and for our peers in this community, I think we should not be afraid of sharing these learnings.
That makes sense. I think we've got probably about 15 minutes left of the discussion, and then I've set aside maybe 5 minutes for the Q&A afterwards. So I guess for the people watching, if you do have questions, or you have had questions so far, feel free to add them in the chat, and at the end we'll go through them. With 15 minutes left, I think maybe we can take a very brief look at project management, for example. It was brought up a little bit earlier, probably a little bit easier from a training perspective. But what are your thoughts on project management as a skill within legal ops? Is it and how would you get trained in it? Maybe Piia first.
Definitely an essential skill. Both as being member of CLOC with Kasper, at least. I don't know if Tomasz is as well. I think it's also sort of program management, project management. I think there are one of the CLOC core 12. So being able to carry out transformation that often happens in projects, that becomes an essential skill. But how to get trained in it? I was fortunate enough to have courses and frameworks and certifications that I was able to get in-house. I think there's some, I'm very naturally quite sort of project oriented, and I tend to think in projects and how to get to the goal most efficiently, and that type of a person. So I've done that all my life in various forms, but then carrying out a change transformation process and what the phases are, that skill came from a certification at work. And when it scaled up to running an IT project, we had all the materials, like this is your gate G1A, G1B, G1C, G2 approvals. You need to have this done a week before your gate approval, and all types of materials that you need to have filled in. So I got to learn it on the job, supported by excellent materials, and I was very fortunate at that.
Okay. And you think the training helped, or do you think you could have done it on the job?
I absolutely think that running a large we're looking at a listed company, mid-sized project, and for many companies it would be a large project with looking at like a change impact of up to 1,500 people. So I needed that support by the material. I would not have been able to do it as well as we did with our team without the support of that structure that we had.
Okay. And Kasper, Tomasz, do you have a view on project management before I briefly go into another topic?
Yeah, I mean, project management to me is a language as well, a language that not just lawyers speak. Actually, I would say a lot of other than lawyers are typically good at project management, whereas I tend to see that project management is something that lawyers learn on the job. Hence, they need some experience, some seniority before they actually get to master it. And this is probably one of the courses or topics that I think is lacking the most from the university side, that we don't get enough training on project management. I don't think project management is specifically for legal ops, but in a much broader sense for any lawyer. And people get used to this over time. But this is a one way of having a common methodology and process around how do we actually go from A to Z in a project.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah. I think should I go now?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think Kasper's correct. I totally agree. I mean, it's not only for legal ops. I think it's for all the lawyers, just to get the fundamentals. And it's not because you need to run the project all the time or at all. You just need to understand the process and trust the process, because otherwise, I've seen it many times, and I was doing it myself, that there was a project managed in the proper way, like following the project management methodology, and I was jumping all of the sudden and like raising all of my concerns and all the risks, and like we need to accelerate here and we need to slow down there. I mean, like, like basically interrupting the whole thing. I was not speaking the language of project management, to put it like Kasper did, right? So I think getting these fundamentals is very important just to be better in supporting business. So it's not necessarily for legal ops. When it comes to legal ops, I mean, you will be more driving the project. And here again, I agree with Kasper and I agree with Piia on two things. Like, one is what Kasper said, like learning it on the job. My experience is it will not lead you anywhere. I mean, you can run projects for years and you will not be better at it, right? Like, you will build your experience. So you will capture this, what went wrong in the past, and you will address it one by one. And by this, I think it's a bias thinking that, oh, it will make you a better project manager. No, it makes you a more experienced person who is doing things, right? So you will remember, oh, this happened like 10 years ago when I was doing this project, so now I will remember fine. But you are still not following the methodology. When you are following the methodology, you will prevent new things to pop up, right? Like, you will not be based on your experience, but you will based on the methodology. So with this, I think I agree. You should actually go through the training. It can be really a couple of sessions with, these are not that sophisticated things, to be honest. I mean, if you are if your background is law, you will not find it, to be honest, it's manageable. It's not like something that is absolutely black magic for you, right? Like you will be fine doing the training or meeting people who are in charge, just listening how they are working and listen to different ways of doing things. Focus on the one that your organization is following. I mean, there is no really, sorry, there is not much sense in doing all in learning all different methodologies or different ways of managing projects if your organization is following one or two. If you go agile in 90% of projects, do the agile training. Right? Don't focus on anything else. I mean, what's the point? You will put it on LinkedIn, but I think if you want to really, if you really want to address it, discuss with your IT guys, like how you guys are running projects, what methodology, do you have any resources, do you have any presentation? I mean, like to start somewhere, and then amazing things are happening, right? Like you understand, all of a sudden you understand why you are having all these routines in the calendar. You understand your role. I mean, it took me quite some time to understand when I'm business owner and not the lawyer in the project. And now I'm not in charge of the legal aspects. I'm in charge of making sure that we are, addressing the needs that we have. So these two things are important. What Kasper and Piia said, right? I mean, this thing actually you shouldn't do only on the job. You should go through the training, and you should seek different sources of it and check what methodology your organization is following. And then try to, as a legal ops specifically, try to engage as many lawyers as possible to do the fundamentals, because then they will understand your work better. And then guess what? They will understand better the way you communicate, and it will be easier for them to get the messages that you want to send them, right? So it all fits the purpose of change management that we discussed before. Yeah.
My number one advice to clients, if they ask about, how do you run an IT project? Well, we want to buy this tech. I'm like, go to your IT and ask how they've done it before.
Mm-hmm. That totally makes sense. I think we're down to probably the last 5 minutes or so. I think I have one more question. I think open to everybody, whoever wants to answer it, or a quick 30 seconds each. But I suppose what tips would you give to anyone looking to upskill themselves to make themselves more employable? So maybe Kasper first, if you want to jump in.
That's not an easy question to answer, I think, because it so much depends on you as a person, but also where you're coming from. If you have no experience yet in this field, I think there's some, as Tomasz said, some homework to be done, and there's so many resources out there that you can pick up for free. I can't count how many hours I've spent reading articles, posts on LinkedIn, joining webinars, even conferences. There's so much to learn here. But there's also books. I think there are excellent books out there. Actually, I have one just right next to me here. I don't know if you can see it, but The Rise of the Legal Operations is really spot on the topic of today, zooming in on qualities and skills that the general should possess in order to become a success. I think it's a really nice book. But so it's a mix of things, and depending on who you are, maybe you prefer reading books and another prefer speaking with peers. I probably like a mix of the things.
Yeah, sorry, I should have been a little bit more specific into, I suppose, two buckets of people. I guess the people that are breaking in, and I suppose the people that are moving up, I guess. Piia?
Yeah, I'd also say that it depends on the market because the maturity of the legal ops industry as a whole is very different based on if you're in the US or if you're in Finland. I was one of less than 10 in-house legal ops professionals, and now that I left the in-house to be a consultant, there's one less. So cannibalized on the market when I moved to work in the consultancy. But in our type of market where there aren't very many professionals, and it's usually lawyers who move to more of an operational role, then it's more a matter of like project management skills, a concrete sort of what type of changes do we need? Maybe developing some basic data analysis skills. If you start in a very junior role, also data analysis skills so that you're able to produce data for decision makers, I'd say is one. Then legal design, Kasper touched upon it. That's, I hope, one sort of, I consider it to be one aspect of under the umbrella of legal ops. And I think that's a very good skill to develop from very early on because the impact that it has on in-house legal ops, being able to run more sort of smoother contracting operations when your people understand what they're working with, or in general service design. That's something that I'd consider a valuable asset for many. And then project management, like we talked, psychology, what's it called?
Neuroscience.
Yeah, neuroscience. I said it myself and then I forgot it. Being multilingual is hard sometimes. But these type of do a lot of reading, like Kasper said, or watch YouTube videos, which is also one of my favorite pastimes.
And Tomasz, to round us off.
Yeah, I think to be less specific, but I think what you really need to have as legal ops is curiosity. And I'm not saying this in a cheesy way. I mean, so what I'm observing that legal ops are usually the people that will always be upset with things not working as they should, the operational work not working as it should. So and I had it always, like if I had 10 contracts to review, and I like to give this example, if I have 10 contracts to review, I would spend probably time equal reviewing 5 of them, thinking how not to review any of them. So I was, like I was constantly thinking like how could I do it more efficiently? And I would literally many times lose time on thinking how not to do something. And then it's about when you see on LinkedIn the report, the link to the report issued by EY recently issued an interesting report on on the future of the in-house. Like actually print it out or read it, like go through it. Just don't save things for later. I mean, you don't have to read everything, but just see what are the trends and I call it curiosity because it's really helpful. Like if there is a report, read it and think about 2 things that you get out of it, right? Even if it's like, oh, we are on the right track as a team. And then to be very specific, go to clock 12. This is it, right? Like at the end of the day, sooner or later, you will tick all the boxes. You should tick all the boxes. But in your specific organization, and then I know I'm boring a bit, but you really need to put it in a context, right? So try to understand what your like if you are seeking this role in your organization, like what are struggles of your GC, right? Or what are struggles of your teams there on the ground? And then, maybe it's not really money. Maybe it's not finance management. Maybe it's change management. I think change management is not at the clock 12, but whatever, right? Vendor management, right? I think you will not be more employable by saying like, oh, I did this course, right? I think it's just a bit naive to think that one course will change it. But I think you need to come up with a proposal, like do things better. Like you need to come up with the offer. Like I can do things more. I can make things being done better, right? and then it's a result of all the skills that you have. I think, this is what I would suggest. So go to clock 12, and this is like, you keep it in mind that you need to eventually tick these boxes. But then how you do it, I think you can do it by reading, you can do it by listening to podcasts, you can do so many different things, and actually joining webinars is a big thing. It's I mean, it was very helpful to me at least, and it still is. But yeah, check what is relevant for your organization or for the market you are interested in. So different markets got different struggles. Some departments are too big, some are too small, some are, struggling with knowledge management, some with service delivery model, some with vendors, financials. Like, it all depends. So probably not that straightforward answer, but the honest one, I think, Marc.
Well, that's what I was looking for.
To add to Tomasz's point, at my previous employer, I was the person sort of very eager to do things better and trying to implement improvements in the workflow that I had with my stakeholders, and also talking about that with my manager. And they created the role of legal ops specialist for me in that organization after I started sort of voicing my struggles. So that can also happen, being very eager about, improving things. And if you want the EY study that Tomasz referred to, you can go to our LinkedIn profile. It's linked in the Gazillion spots. So that can be found there.
Great.
Yeah, I think in general we got more advice to people that are seeking the role in the current organization they are in than to, if you go outside, then yes, indeed, you need to, go for different trainings, because how you will market your curiosity and innovativeness if not by, courses that you are doing, right? But even if you are looking for something outside the organization, I think getting experience sooner or later will be checked, right? So wherever you are now, try to go this extra mile. So if you see that the team is struggling with something, okay, I mean, I shouldn't say, but stay after hours and, think about how would you address it. The good thing about doing it, not as your primary task, is that you got another thing I should probably say. You got a bit of a more permission to not to deliver, right? Like, if you are doing it after hours, you are trying something, you are doing it only, as a genuine, as a thing you want to do to improve how the team works. I think the chances that someone will, point finger and say like, oh, you failed, like you should have delivered. Like, you can always say like, well, I was doing it, kind of on top of everything. So it's not my primary task. But if you succeed, then you're gaining experience that is really, really helpful. So I think, push yourself to do the extra mile. Pretend you are a legal ops already. I think this is what helped me as well. Like, I was just, staying later and thinking and, putting stuff on the whiteboard and, talking to people. And at certain point, I gained some successes, right? And I think, I suppose, Piia, this is, and Kasper, this is the story of each of us, right? Like, at certain point, people say like, okay, this guy is like, he can actually change stuff. So he failed a couple of times, but this one is that the good one. Yeah, it stayed. Yeah. Again, too long answer, Marc.
It's fine. It's good to listen to. I think we're probably at the end. I think there's probably not a lot of time for questions. I don't think there were any in there. But obviously, if there were questions from the people that are in this webinar, or I guess subsequently afterwards, feel free to reach out to me.
Marc, there's a few in the Q&A
oh, there's some in there.
session. Yeah, there's from Ali Punak and Gordon Williams.
Sorry. Okay. Do either of you want to take one of those?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the first question is, how do you foster collaboration between legal and other departments like finance or procurement? And I mean, I think as legal ops, you are a business partner as well as your colleagues probably are in the legal team, but you have some of the other corporate functions as your most important stakeholders probably. So the legal ops is also very much about building relationships with your peers in the organization, not least finance or procurement. Also depending on what mission you're on. But I think to me, to foster collaboration is to show that there's a mutual interest, and you're also show empathy of their issues, and target things that's not only solving the headaches of the legal team, but also your stakeholders in the business. So that's probably, at least by my experience, the best way of fostering a collaboration.
No,
Tomasz,
just to build on that, I totally agree. I mean, you will best get them on board if you explain what is there for them, right? And then it will be good to identify someone who would be interested. So I like to say that you always do legal ops one way or the other, even if you think you're done, right? Sometimes it's just incorporated in the core work, right? Like you're always, it's not like you don't have a legal ops role in your organization, you're not managing law firms, like you do, but you don't have dedicated resources, right? Sometimes this tasks might be like somehow distributed among already existing team members. Sometimes you have dedicated resources, and it's similar in other functions, right? So if you are about to, let's say, I think in the question the procurement was there, right? So okay, fine. We want to come up with a great way of delivering tenders, right? Okay, let's organize a tender for law firms. We will get our benefit. You will get yours because you will get a, like a nice case study for other functions. So you can say, hey, we did this project with lawyers. It was a great success. We saved this and this amount of money. And I was leading as procurement, whatever person, like procurement excellence or, whatever the name is. So, pointing out benefits that they can get, and try to find someone like you, right? So someone who is, it's not like this legal ops thing is not specific to legal. I mean, in each function, in procurement, there are also people that think like, okay, how could we do things more efficiently, right? Find this person and that would be equally engaged, right? And do it with them, like try to do small steps. The other option that is more straightforward, but in my opinion, more difficult to execute is to go top down, right? To go officially, guys, you need to appoint someone. We need to collaborate. We need to have this routine and so on and so on. It also can be done, but what I explained before is kind of more, bottom up approach, and I found it more engaging and interesting, although less straightforward.
Having business sponsors is also, this is partially based on my experience, partially on the study referenced. So having business sponsors is often essential to get the ball rolling. It's easier to get investment for tech if you have a business sponsor, or if it's even the business that's buying, although ultimately might be like what's traditionally considered a sort of legal tech solution. Also, a skill that I would develop is the reporting skills and being able to talk in numbers so that you're able to get credibility in the eyes of your sort of senior management for other than, the legal line. Often legal is placed under the CFO in many organizations, and being able to talk numbers, not only, my people are telling me that we need more colleagues because they have too much work, but actually having like, this is the amount of work that we're dealing with. If we look at, our workload this way, we can either increase personnel, or then if labor laws are very stiff, we can look at alternative legal service providers to sort of build capacity that we can also scale down quickly, or we can look at alternative sourcing models for external legal services. so that we can cost efficiently scale now in this pressure that we have, and consider later if we actually want to hire staff and sort of these kind of things.
I think I will wrap it up there. Sorry if not everybody has had their questions answered. I'll see about getting them answered maybe a little bit later. But a big thanks to Piia, Tomasz, and Kasper for a great discussion on skills and which skills you need, and ultimately where do you get them from, or how do you learn them. Big thanks. I hope that the people here in the call also thank them as well. Feel free to reach out if you also have questions. But yeah, I look forward to seeing you all in the next one, which should be next webinar, which should be next month. So watch this space. But yeah, thanks all. Have a good rest of your day, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.